Hi, I'm Paul Allen Hunton, host of a new show here on Channel 5, The Sit Down. Tonight's our first episode and we have a very special presentation. I interview country music legend Lyle Lovett. Welcome to Lubbock. Welcome to Texas Tech.
Paul, thank you, and thank you for doing this with me. Thank you all for showing up. I'm thrilled to be here.
So welcome. Yeah, you've had some good experiences. You were at Lubbock High today.
You know, it was a tremendous experience getting to go to Lubbock High. I met with some music students there who couldn't have been nicer and more interested in music. They were just really kind and got to we met in the auditorium there, that beautiful 1,300 seat auditorium where all I could think about as I walked in was that Buddy Holly had played there, and what a privilege it was to stand in the same spot.
Yeah, absolutely. To your roots, growing up, Klein, Texas, you have the community there has experienced some hardships here in the last several months with the hurricane, and I know Klein was affected specifically. What has that process been like? I know you've been involved in raising funds and things going on, but how are things back home?
Things are getting better. Neighborhoods, our area, the Klein community, is an unincorporated part of Harris County, North Harris County. We're about, 28 miles north of downtown Houston. And I joke that I grew up out in the country, and now I live in the city, but I haven't moved. And it's kind of sad but true if you like living in the country. But our area has become a full-on suburban area, and a lot of the housing developments that have been built in the last 20 years are, they're built close to the creeks, close to places where people used to not build, and the folks that lived close to those waterways got it the worst. And there's still neighborhoods where you drive through and you see debris, construction debris piled up in the yards. And I just was. We were on tour when the hurricane came through, and I was so moved by just watching television and seeing people come from all over. The folks that came from Louisiana, the folks that came from out here and from East Texas, showed up with john boats and put in and started rescuing people. And it was so touching to see how people helped one another. I've gotten to participate in a couple of fundraisers, benefits, and since I wasn't able to get a boat and go out there, I'm just trying to do what I can. But I tell you, it's very little compared to the personal sacrifices people have made. Yeah.
So you're still on, the family land, the family ranch, family farm, and now you've just had twins.
Well, that's true. Yes.
And so they'll get to walk in their father's footsteps as far as what you experienced growing up, except of course they're in the city now, not in the country.
That's right.
You even bought back some of the land that was your family's that had been sold off. Why is that connection to where you come from so important to you?
I'm not sure, but it always has been important to me because I grew up around next door to my grandparents and just down the road from my aunts and uncles and cousins. I've always felt as though I come from a big family. And my parents both worked in town, so their commute was, in those days, even with fewer people there because the roads weren't as good, their commute could be, an hour and a half each way. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and with my aunts and uncles, and a lot of time on the place. And there's something about the land that I've always liked. You get to know a knoll in a certain part of a pasture that you can stand up on and look around. You study an oak tree that you can stand under when it starts raining and you can stay completely dry. And you remember things like that. You walk out in the pasture with your grandfather and you go fishing in the pond, and those are memories that come to life for me still when I walk around the place.
What from that work ethic, those types of things that you learned in that upbringing, have you carried through that have helped you in your career, in your songwriting, in your pursuit of being a musician and an artist?
Oh gosh, I think it was, fear of work that caused me to want to play music. My mom's youngest sibling, her younger brother, my uncle Calvin Klein is his name, and he's older than the designer. He's older than the designer, but he, just gets lots of mileage out of having the same name. But he's a charming guy, and he's the one from my mom's family that kept the farm going. He had a dairy farm when I was a boy, but he says to me when I come home from tour, he says, well, you look all right, but you got an easy life. And I say, yes, sir, I do.
What's that first memory you have? We all grow up around music. We hear it, whether it was the radio or the record player or whatever that may be. But what was that first song or that first music that you heard where it became something different, where it became something that this is something I want to pursue, or I want to kind of untangle what it is I'm hearing and maybe learn how to do that myself?
Wow, that's a great question, Paul.
Well, thank you.
My folks played the radio a lot in the car, and they would. I remember Mom and Dad and I would sing along with the radio a lot. I can't ever remember not going to church, and I always enjoyed singing in church. Mom was particular about the melody and would help teach me the melodies of hymns. But my mom and dad gave me opportunities they never had. I think for a lot of us, our parents made choices in their lives based on what they had to do. And I think every time I walk out on stage, every time I pick up my guitar, and it's okay to do it because it's my work, I think about how they gave me the chance to make choices in my life based on what I want to do. I am grateful for that, I was in second grade when my mom came home one day and said, hey, would you like to take guitar lessons? And I'd never considered it. But I thought, well, hey, why not?
Yeah.
And so that was how it started. And it was the same thing, and with piano lessons, and really it was the encouragement of and support from loving parents that made it possible for me. Music wasn't something I aspired to as a child. It wasn't something I thought I wanted to do. That's something that I thought I did. It was just part of my life. And so I wasn't terribly ambitious about it. I was just, cool with it.
Yeah. That's good. You're still cool now. So you get to Texas A&M and you are pursuing a journalism degree. Maybe you tried something else, but journalism is what you ended up with some German mixed in there. So music still wasn't necessarily, I'm sure it was still your passion, but it wasn't necessarily something like, this is my career.
It was playing. I started playing in clubs when I was 18, the summer of 1976, which was my first summer home from school, and just liked it. I really enjoyed it and didn't want to stop. I was involved at Texas A&M in the student programs office at the student union. I was involved with a student committee that ran a coffee house on campus that was mainly a forum for student performers. We had enough budget to hire in professionals 2 or 3 times a year, but it was mainly a student performance place. And we had shows every Friday and Saturday night from 8 to 12. We did 30-minute sets, and I found myself, after going to a couple of meetings, we met every Monday and we had auditions, which was kind of a scam because we never turned anybody down. It was just kind of fun for us to put people on the spot and get them to play for us. They said, okay, you're on the programming part of the committee. And I said, what does that mean? And they said, you call people and you ask them to play. And so that was sort of how I spent my evenings, from playing that summer to being involved with the committee, music was a big part of my university experience. And no, never, as much as I enjoyed it, I did not at that point, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, think that it might lead to gainful employment.
Yeah. For many, it still does not.
Well, you know, it can be day to day. I played 2 or 3 or 4 times a week from that summer of 1976. Played sometimes at the basement coffee house. Well, in fact, the spring of 1976 was my first performance ever, and it was at the basement coffee house, and I booked myself. And that's how you get a gig.
Yeah. Take notes, Lubbock musicians.
Got to know the manager of the Mr. Gaddy's pizza place close to campus, and he first started letting me fill in for his regular acts on Thursday night and then sometimes on Sunday night, and then pretty soon I was playing every weekend, and then sometimes when he couldn't get people to play certain nights, I would do 4 nights, and I would get paid $50 a night, and I played there for 2 years. Did not buy a pizza in those 2 years. They fed me, and so it was a pretty good deal. My parents sent me to school, and they paid my tuition. They gave me enough money to pay my rent. So the money that I made playing music, my $50 a night, that was important to me in terms of, I could save up and buy a new microphone. I could make my PA better. I saved up for my first Collins guitar with that money, and so I didn't have to struggle in the way to support myself in the way a lot of people do, because once again, my parents thought, "Oh my God, what's he doing?" But they helped me anyway. Yeah, they supported me. My mom was always supportive, and Dad too. And then they were sometimes, they were certainly my best audience in those days, and sometimes my only audience. Yeah. And they came up a lot of times on the weekend to listen. But and those are wonderful memories for me. I still have my mom. My mom will be 88 this November, and she lives next door. And we lost my dad in 1999, and as all of you know who've lost someone that close to you, it just changes the world and how you see the world. But as does having children. But I think fondly of those days when I'd look out in the Mr. Gaddy's and there'd be my folks and nobody else. But my mom always recommended, stay in school. Make sure you've got a fallback position, because you never know. This music thing might not work out. And I still hear that. It still echoes.
I think a couple more years and you'll have made it.
I don't know.
So you're writing songs, you're performing, you're sort of honing your craft. When did it start to become the reality that this is something I can pursue? You went to Kerrville. That was sort of some of the early success, winning Kerrville. You had written some songs that were getting performed by others. When did it become? Did you get the call out to Nashville? Did someone come scout you? When did it become where you were in a position where you were ready to cut that first record?
I was class of 1979 at Texas A&M University, and I graduated in 1980, I moved home actually with my folks, and started playing. Kept playing the clubs I was already playing. By then, I was able to. I had enough of my own songs together to play a place that's very near and dear to my heart, and was really important in sort of getting used to playing my own songs. A wonderful original music club in the Montrose area in Houston called Anderson Fair Retail Restaurant. So I was playing places like that, playing Poor David's Pub in Dallas, playing the Cactus Cafe and Emma Joe's in Austin, playing Sunday afternoons in the front room at Green Hall where they'd have folk music. So I was playing the same half a dozen clubs every couple of months. In 1983, I was invited to play at a city festival in Luxembourg in Europe by a fellow that I had met over there when I was in Germany studying German in school, and I thought, well, that sounds like fun, and so I went. I went in September of 1983 to play the Schuberfuhr is the name of the festival. They have it every year, and it's a month-long deal, and they have lots of different attractions, and it's kind of a big city carnival. And this particular year was a music tent that featured two bands. One was a band from Orlando that billed itself as a Las Vegas Revue, and they played the current top 40 hits of the time. And they did play lots of Neil Diamond, which I liked. And then there was a band from Phoenix that I didn't know, but they were from the biggest sort of honky-tonk in Phoenix, a place called Mr. Lucky's. And they were smoking. They were really great. The front man, the lead singer, the leader of the band was J. David Sloan. His music director was Billy Williams. His piano player was an 18-year-old Matt Rawlings. His guitar player was a 23-year-old Ray Herndon. His bass player was a 21-year-old Matt McKenzie. And I played the set changes between the two bands. The fellow that hired me, or that was responsible for getting me hired, unfortunately got fired the day I arrived.
Is that a coincidence that occurred?
It was. He was involved in this event and was a graphic artist by trade, yeah. and he designed a poster that was too provocative for the sponsor of this event, which was the airline Cargo Lux, and he drew this cartoonish cowgirl with pistol cross,
yeah,
but bare-breasted, and it was.
Isn't that par for the course in Europe, or no?
No comment. And so he was dismissed, and I thought, this may not go well for me. Yeah, they'd given me one-way passage to Luxembourg,
oh.
and so I was genuinely concerned, and because in the performance, in playing this set change, people just weren't interested in what I was doing, and I could tell that immediately, and so I, in talking to this band from Phoenix, explained all that. And J. David Sloan said, well, I tell you what, he said, why don't we learn some of your songs, and you can come up during our set, and you can work every day, and then, at the end of this deal, we'll help you get your ticket home. And I said, thank you. But that was the first time that I got to play with a real band. And it was the first time I got to hear my songs played by a band. And at the end of that deal, they said, well, if you ever want to record, why don't you come out to Phoenix? We'll be happy to work with you. And in June of 1984, I went into the recording studio with them in Scottsdale, and we recorded 4 songs in one day, meeting J. David Sloan and the Rogues from Mr. Lucky's in Phoenix. And recording with them is what gave me the chance to learn about the music business. So I went to Nashville with a 4-song demo tape, and I made the rounds. Those first 4 songs turned into an 18-song demo. I went to Nashville, then I'd go back home, go back out to Phoenix. We record a few more songs. The guys in the band were playing every night at Mr. Lucky's. We could work from 10 to 4 every day. Billy Williams, who the music director of the band and was producing the tracks, let me stay at his house. And he and I would go to the studio every day. We ended up with 18 songs. By that September, we ended up with 18 songs. And then that 18-song tape was what started going around Nashville. On my first trip, I went to CBS Songs because one of my songwriting heroes was a staff writer there, Guy Clark. Mm. And I was able to get a meeting at CBS Songs with the guy in the basement who made tape copies for the publishing company, and he's still in the business. His name's Sam Ramage, and became a publisher, a very successful publisher. But he was originally from Houston, from Bel Air, Texas. Went to Bel Air High School, so we had Houston in common. He was very down to earth and said, "Yeah, I don't know if I can help you." And I said, "Well, look, Guy Clark writes here. If there's any way, if you ever have the chance to give Guy Clark my tape, I'd really appreciate it." I said, "I know it's a long shot, but I would really appreciate it." And he said, "Okay, thanks." And so we shook hands, and that was it. And I didn't hear anything from Sam and didn't expect to hear anything from him. And so I would go home after making the rounds, and every few weeks I'd go back to Nashville. And as I went to Nashville, and as I met people, and as I went around town, all of a sudden somebody said to me, "Oh yeah, Guy Clark told me about you." And I thought, "What?" And I'd meet somebody else, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, Guy Clark gave me your tape." And I'd think, what is wrong? Something is really wrong. Because
There's another Guy Clark.
I hadn't met Guy. I hadn't met Guy. I was a fan. But it turns out that Sam Ramage gave Guy Clark that demo tape, and Guy Clark started making copies of it and giving it to people.
Guy Clark was bootlegging your album?
Exactly. Guy Clark called Tony Brown at MCA Records and had lunch with him to give Tony Brown my tape. Now, I had never met Guy. I had never met Tony Brown. I had barely ever had lunch. And so, months later, when a publishing company was interested in signing me, and a record company said they were interested in signing me, and they Curb Records took me back to MCA Records. Tony Brown had heard of me, and Tony Brown thought more of me, I'm thinking, because Guy Clark had spoken up for me.
Yeah.
And so Guy went from being my musical hero, my songwriting hero, to being one of my personal heroes. Yeah. And without Guy and his influence, without Guy and his music, I wouldn't be sitting here tonight.
Yeah. You've had some great collaborations, and we touched on Guy Clark and the great friendship that stemmed from that. And it's one of those things where a lot of the folks that you do collaborate with, it's never just a one-off. You create these friendships, and one of that is sort of manifested in the large band. You guys have been playing for 30 years?
Well, the first time, we did these recordings in 1984.
84.
Billy Williams, after we recorded one of my blues songs, Billy said, "What would you think about putting horns on this?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Sure, let's try it." And so we did these arrangements, and we made these recordings that I wasn't able to reproduce live. Couldn't afford the band enough until 1988. 1988 was the first time that I was able to tour with a horn section. So it was 1988 was the first time we went out and called the band the Large Band. And in fact, that was a kind of a last-minute, spur-of-the-moment deal as well, naming the band, because it never occurred to me to name the band The record company had helped me to get a sponsorship from Pioneer, the stereo people. We rehearsed for a couple of days in Nashville at SIR, and we're about to get on the bus to go to Alexandria, Virginia, to play the Birchmere for our very first gig as the large band. And Tony Brown, our producer, came to me and said, Pioneer wants to know what the name of the band is. And I said, he said, seriously, they want the band to have a name. And I looked around the room, and there were so many people in there. There were musicians everywhere. And so I said, how about the large band? And he said, really? And that's when I knew. So I said, yeah. I said, yeah. So I said, yeah, that's the large, how about the large band? And so that's what we called it. And that really was it was that sort of spur of the moment. But people, because of these arrangements with saxophones and jazz-like arrangements, sometimes the songs would be written up as having a big band style, which they're definitely not. You know,
Yeah.
Big band is a specific thing, but we get referred to as big band, and so I thought, well, let's make a distinction.
Yeah.
Let's call it big. But people do refer to, and I don't mind, of course, I'm just grateful if anybody listens at all, but people refer to the band as the big band all the time. But even to the point, April, my lovely wife, suggested for our 2007 album, she said, what about calling it It's Not Big, It's Large? And I said, well, that's...
I mean.
And I said, will you marry me? Thanks for your thoughtful questions, and thank you all for your thoughtful questions, and for being here. It is, I tell you, I just appreciate so much that you all support me, and people, everywhere we go. It's an extraordinary thing to be able to do something that you love to do every day of your life, and it's only because of you folks that I and people like me get to do that. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
That's good.